Now that you have an understanding of basic SVN, how it's used, what the operations are, and how it can make your life easier when dealing with code on a team or just individually, we're going to talk about best practices that will allow you to work more efficiently with SVN without a lot of frustration. You will find that by thoroughly planning your directory and file structure, always updating your working copy before you commit, using verbose commit notes, and always locking binary or any non-text-based file, that you will reduce your SVN nightmares significantly. You will not run into many of the issues that will cause tremendous frustration as a developer and as a team member. A typical SVN repository structure consists of branches, tags, and trunk. The two that you should be concerned with at this point are trunk and tags. Trunk is where you will be working out of, and most likely whomever set up the repository will have provided a version number or some sort of unique location within trunk for your specific project files to go. As you are working with your project and creating directories or moving the directory structure around, it should only take place within trunk. Try to keep trunk organized in a fashion using either version numbers or some other meaningful structure that you have come up with. The tags directory is used when you have a stable build of the current project in trunk and you wish to tag it as a version for either a formal release or just for internal development purposes. When you are ready to tag what you have been working on in trunk because it is stable and ready to be given a version number, you would copy that directory from trunk into tags and create a version number directory. So if you had a stable build in trunk that was ready to be labeled V1, you would create a directory in tags called V1 and copy the source files from trunk into that V1 directory in tags. Always update your local working copy prior to committing any changes you have made to the repository. The reason this is important is because if you have modified files in your local working copy and another user has committed changes to the repository since you last updated, the SVN merge tool may not be able to successfully merge the other user's changes in the repository with the changes in your local working copy. This will cause a conflict. It is best for the conflict to occur in your local working copy so that you have a chance to resolve it prior to committing those changes to the repository and causing the conflict in the repository. Secondly, always lock all non-text-based files when working with them in SVN. SVN's merge tool is not capable of merging non-text-based files. So if you make changes to a file locally in your working copy and another user is making changes simultaneously in their working copy, only one set of changes will actually be kept because SVN cannot merge those two files. So you will either need to coordinate manually with that user and replace the changes or duplicate them because SVN will not be able to handle that for you. This will cause extra work and loss of data, so it's just easier if you always lock your files when working with non-text-based files in SVN. Committing files falls into three categories. There are either a single file commit, feature commit, or a blanket commit. To keep the SVN history clean and organized, it is a best practice to only do single or feature commits. There are very few scenarios where a blanket commit would be acceptable because the blanket commit simply pushes a large number of files to the SVN repository as a single revision number without adequate detail about what was changed. One exception to this would be if you were simply making UI changes to, say, a dozen files that affected the same area of the site, and there was nothing really unique, just adjusting pixels or the length or width of different components within the view, that type of thing. That would be an acceptable blanket commit. Any commits that affect logic or features and the functionality of the application, those should be done as a single file with a detailed commit note explaining what was changed, or as a feature, and all the files of the feature should be committed with detailed commit notes explaining what was done to the feature, what functionality was added, what functionality was removed, and how the files were affected in order to complete this. Commit notes that are never acceptable are ones that are too vague or ones that are missing completely. The reason commit notes are so important is because if there is an issue with the SVN repository where a feature is lost or some functionality changes that was unexpected, whoever is in charge of controlling the overall SVN repository will need to go back through and figure out at which point this feature was lost or this functionality changed without intention. That process is beyond the scope of this basic SVN course, but just know that whomever needs to perform that task will require detailed commit notes in order to be more efficient in that process. So by following these best practices when committing your files, if there is an issue where a feature or functionality is lost or changed unintentionally, it will make the life of the person that must go back through and find where this change occurred, it will make their life much easier, because that process can be very long and tedious, especially with no or very vague commit notes. So in summary, always use detailed commit notes and commit single files or features at a time. Avoid blanket commits, vague or no commit notes.